So I was at work the other day, and I decided I was going to record a spray bottle. And then make a beat with it. This is what it ended up sounding like. So now I just want to show you guys what my process was for creating the drums with the spray bottle. So the first thing that I started out with was the kick, and that was me banging the spray bottle on the table. And so I took that recording, and as you can see, I put a bunch of effects on here. I got a utility, a snap heap with a shaper. I did some automation with this EQ8, the low pass filter. Then I put a shifter on here, did some more automation with fine tune, put another shifter, turned down the fine tune, got another EQ8 in here and I boosted the low end. Then I saturated it, put another filter on it, did some more automation, put another EQ8, dipped around 200 Hertz it looks like. Then I added a compressor, the threshold at -10, the output at 5, and the release is pretty fast. I didn't really mess with the attack. Then I have a limiter on here. Then I went ahead and recorded that into a separate audio track, added another snap heap to this separate audio track, added some distortion, a filter, recorded it again and called it final kick. So it went from this to this. The next thing was the hi-hat, so that was me spraying the bottle. For this, I went ahead and added an overdrive, an EQ8, a shifter, a saturator, some reverb. Looks like I did some automation as well. Added another EQ8 with a high pass. There's a utility here, but that doesn't really need to be here. It's not doing anything. Then I added a compressor and then the limiter and made 3 separate audio tracks for 3 different hi-hats. I basically just took the audio sample and pitched it. I got hi-hat 1, hi-hat 2, and hi-hat 3. So it went from this to this. And then for the clap, that was me throwing the cap on the table. So I took a bunch of those recordings, put them in 3 separate audio tracks, grouped them, and this was my effects chain. I used a utility. I set the balance to the right at 16 here. I added an EQ8 and did some automation. I added an effect rack to do parallel processing with a hybrid reverb. Added a shifter, an EQ8, another shifter, did some automation with fine tune. Added another effect rack to do some parallel processing with a chorus, added a reverb, did some automation, and I added some OTT, added a compressor, then I added a shifter, did some more EQ with an EQ8, then I added a limiter. And then this is what I got. I then recorded that into a separate audio track and called it Process 2. Did some more processing. It's like I basically just added an EQ and did some automation. Then I recorded that into another separate audio track and called it Final Clap. So I went from this to this. And then for the tom drum, that was me flicking the side of the bottle. So I grabbed that recording, put a utility on it, put the balance to the right a little bit, grabbed an EQ8 and boosted the lows, so it was pretty resonant. Then I put a saturator on it, then a shifter. I did some automation with that. Then I grabbed a snap heap, put a shaper in here, stereo, I turned down the width a little bit, then a compressor. And then this utility again, I don't know why I have a utility on here, it's not doing anything, so I'm just gonna delete that. And the last thing I added was a limiter. Then I recorded this sample to a separate audio track, and I recorded this again and pitched it. So I went from this to this. I then tried to recreate a snare. I didn't really get a snare sound. This was my final result from the sample. So I basically just took the final sample from the spray bottle and the clap and combined them. Did a whole bunch of processing with a bunch of different effects here. And I recorded it. And as you can hear, the sample is shifted. I then grouped it again and did some more processing. Inside this second group, it's like I tried to have a tail, the body of the snare, and looks like a transient. Like I said, it didn't really turn out so well, so I just decided I was going to record it, and this was the sample. So it's more like a percussion sound. So once I was done processing all the samples, I went ahead and inserted a drum rack and dragged and dropped each sample into a drum sampler. And then for the beat, I also went ahead and added a saturator, turned up the drive a little bit, and added utility to boost the gain. Then I laid out a pattern with the drum samples, and this is what I got. That's how you make drums with a spray bottle.